Shocking breakthrough. That's the only way to describe what happened on the border between Mali and Burkina Faso. A single operation, one that the mainstream media has been reluctant to cover in full, has rewritten the balance of power in the Sahel. On August 13, 2025, an African army delivered a victory so decisive, so complete, that even the most skeptical voices in West Africa had to stop and recognize it. August 13, 2025. Write down that date because in the future, analysts will look back and call it the day the Sahel map shifted. For years, terrorist networks had treated the vast cave systems along the Mali-Burkina Faso border as their fortresses. These weren't shallow holes in the ground. These were labyrinths, natural strongholds that gave them cover from the skies, tunnels for smuggling, and chambers for storing weapons. Western analysts had said it was nearly impossible to root them out without massive collateral damage. Local villagers had grown used to the ominous hum of motorcycles carrying fighters at night, the shadow of rifles at the edge of their fields, the constant fear that their homes could be raided and their children taken. But the patience of the people was thinning, and so was that of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. From the day he took command, Traoré had promised his people something radical, that the Burkinabè army would no longer accept defeat as inevitable, that African forces could and would beat back the chaos without relying on foreign boots on the ground. Many doubted him, some mocked him, but his soldiers listened, and they trained. It all came together on a dark morning, August 13, 2025, at 4:23 a.m. The operation had a code name, Operation Cave Strike. The target, a massive terrorist stronghold buried deep in a cave complex near the Mali border. The goal, eliminate the fighters, seize their weapons, expose their funding, and send a message that no safe haven would remain untouched. The planning had taken months. Intelligence was pooled from across continents. Russian satellites first detected unusual activity in the caves. Movement too organized to be shepherds, too consistent to be smugglers. Chinese drones confirmed the suspicion, capturing thermal images of large gatherings and weapon stockpiles. Local defense volunteers, men who had grown up on that soil, who knew the terrain like the back of their hands, identified entry points, hidden trails, and storage spots. Turkish specialists jammed the terrorists' communications so no warning could be sent, no reinforcements summoned. This wasn't luck. This was coordination. African soldiers using global partnerships to level the playing field, but with Africans firmly in command. Colonel Boubacar Sanfo, the man entrusted with command on the ground, described it later with a single phrase: surgical precision. Phase 1, aerial reconnaissance. Turkish TB-2 drones flew silently above the caves, eyes in the sky, confirming positions without alerting the enemy. Every movement was mapped. Every possible escape route was marked. Phase 2, precision strikes. Russian helicopters struck first, not randomly but deliberately, cutting off escape tunnels, destroying fuel depots, collapsing outer storage chambers, trapping the terrorists inside their own fortress. Phase 3, the ground assault. Elite Burkinabè forces, supported by armored vehicles, advanced on the entrances. They weren't charging blindly. They knew where to hit, how to breach, and how to maintain formation even under fire. Night vision gear gave them the edge in darkness. Advanced body armor shielded them as they pushed forward. Phase 4, mop-up operations. Once the outer defenses collapsed, the soldiers pressed deeper into the caves. Every room, every tunnel, every chamber cleared. By dawn, it was over. The numbers tell the story, but they don't tell all of it. Over 100 terrorists killed, exact count, 107. Not one Burkinabè soldier lost, not one. Weapons seized, rocket launchers, heavy machine guns, explosives. The kind of equipment no local black market could supply. Stockpiles that would have armed dozens of attacks. Cash seized, more than $500,000 worth, in multiple currencies, crisp American dollars, fresh British pounds, Swiss francs, Emirati dirhams. Money meant for fuel, bribes, recruitment. Money that proved beyond doubt that these terrorists were not self-sustaining rebels, but clients in a larger game, fed and armed by outside powers. Vehicles, motorcycles, radios, encrypted devices all taken. Maps marked with military targets, numbers of foreign handlers, even plans for attacks on bases in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. This was not just a tactical victory, it was an intelligence bonanza. The money trail was damning. Fresh bundles of US dollars suggesting direct, recent transfers. British pounds in denominations rarely used in the region, hinting at networks in London. Euros traced to banks in Switzerland. Even UAE dirhams, raising questions about Gulf involvement. Analysts quickly pieced together the purpose of these funds: fuel for vehicles to expand operations across the Sahel, payments to arms dealers for more advanced weapons, bribes to corrupt officials, cash stipends to lure impoverished youth into joining. But the weapons were even more shocking. Advanced RPGs with foreign serials, high-caliber machine guns not found in African markets, explosives manufactured with techniques that required state-level sophistication, communication devices with encryption beyond what local militants could produce. Colonel Traore, intelligence chief, said it plainly: "This is not village warfare. These weapons require state-level resources. Someone is supplying them." Captured laptops and phones exposed even more. Messages to financiers abroad, voice notes coordinating with handlers in the Middle East, spreadsheets detailing monthly budgets nearing $900,000, even propaganda videos designed for recruitment, some aimed not at Africans, but at European and North American audiences. The most dangerous revelation: evidence of coordination with political opposition groups intent on exploiting government instability. Terror wasn't just aimed at villagers, it was meant to destabilize entire states. For the Burkinabè army, the meaning was immediate: proof that their training and modernization were not wasted. Proof that African soldiers could execute a mission with zero casualties. Proof that technology, when placed in African hands, could tilt the battlefield decisively. For the terrorists, the message was brutal: nowhere is safe. Their caves, once fortresses, had become coffins. Their funding networks were bleeding out into the open. Their recruitment pipelines suddenly poisoned by doubt. And for Africa, the meaning went far beyond the battlefield. For decades, outsiders had said African armies were incapable of handling these threats without Western oversight. Operation Cave Strike shattered that narrative. General Celestin Simpour, Burkina Faso's defense minister, summed it up best: "This proves African armies, equipped with modern technology, can achieve results that surpass Western operations in the same terrain." But how did this happen? How did an army once written off as under-equipped and under-trained pull off a flawless strike? The answer lies in the transformation Ibrahim Traoré has driven. Technology advantage: drones from Turkey, helicopters from Russia, encrypted communication from China, advanced body armor, all adapted for African terrain. Training doctrine: Russian instructors taught elite forces cave warfare tactics. Local defense units were integrated, providing intelligence no outsider could. Coordination between branches was near flawless, every maneuver rehearsed, every bullet accounted for. Strategic philosophy: African solutions for African problems. No foreign troops on the ground, no Western oversight. African hands, African brains, African execution. This wasn't just a victory, it was a demonstration. The impact spread fast. Terrorist cells in Mali and Niger panicked, evacuating caves, canceling attacks, fearing infiltration. Suspicion spread among their ranks. Recruitment stalled. Meanwhile, Mali and Niger adopted the same playbook, using intelligence from Cave Strike to launch their own coordinated raids. Within weeks, 67 more terrorists were eliminated in joint operations. Villages once occupied were liberated. 12 communities returned to government control. Over 8,000 civilians finally walked back into their homes. Schools reopened, health centers restarted, supply lines unclogged. A village chief put it simply: "The soldiers came like lightning and cleared our land. Now our children can go to school. Now our women can farm without fear." And that's where we pause. Because this was not just the story of one operation. It was the beginning of a revolution in African military capability. A revolution that the world could no longer ignore. The dust had barely settled over the caves when the shock waves spread across the region. What had begun as a single operation in the pre-dawn hours of August 13th was already rewriting conversations in Ouagadougou, Bamako, Niamey, Conakry, and beyond. Terrorist networks that once operated with impunity were now in disarray. The intercepted messages told the story: frantic calls for evacuation, accusations of betrayal within their ranks, leaders demanding explanations for how their supposed fortress had been exposed and destroyed. Some commanders fled into the desert, abandoning weapons and recruits. Others tried to regroup, only to find that their communications were already compromised. The psychological blow was perhaps greater than the physical one. For years, jihadist groups in the Sahel had built an aura of invincibility. They told young recruits that governments were weak, that armies could not touch them, that the caves and deserts were their shield. Cave strikes shattered that myth. The aura cracked. The invincible had been exposed as vulnerable. Dr. Fatou Caboret, a respected security analyst, captured it perfectly. This operation was more than a tactical success. It was psychological warfare. It told every fighter in the region, you are not safe, not in the caves, not in the night, not anywhere. The methodology of cave strike, multi-branch coordination, drone surveillance, precision strikes, intelligence integration, spread quickly to neighbors. Within weeks, Mali and Niger launched their own coordinated operations, guided by the same playbook. The results were immediate. 67 additional terrorists eliminated in cross-border raids. Dozens of caches of weapons and cash seized. Terrorist supply lines severed. And most importantly, a new trust forged between Sahelian armies that had long been fractured by mistrust and competing agendas. For the first time, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger demonstrated a truly unified command structure. Intelligence was shared in real time. Drones fed images across borders. Armored units coordinated their advances, as though they were one army rather than three separate commands. This cooperation alone was revolutionary. Western powers had long argued that African armies were too divided to stand together. Operation Cave Strike and its follow-ups proved them wrong. But perhaps the most meaningful impact was not in the war rooms or the headlines. It was in the villages. 12 communities, once under terrorist occupation, were liberated. 8,400 civilians could finally return home. Mothers carried their children back into schools that had been closed for years. Farmers walked into fields they had abandoned, the soil waiting for seed. Health centers reopened, providing vaccinations and care. One village chief, Ibrahim Traoré, gave a voice to what thousands were feeling. President Traore's soldiers came like lightning. They swept the terrorists away. Now our children can study, our women can work the fields, and our men can walk without fear. For the first time in years, we breathe freely. These testimonies mattered. They weren't statistics. They were proof that security could return, that hope could be planted again in the soil of the Sahel. Operation Cave Strike also revealed something deeper, a transformation in African military capability that had been quietly building under Captain Ibrahim Traoré. For decades, the narrative had been that African armies were undertrained, under-equipped, and incapable of conducting complex operations without Western oversight. But Cave Strike turned that narrative on its head. Consider the tools. Drones from Turkey provided 72 hours of surveillance, undetected, delivering precision targeting. Not one civilian casualty was recorded. Russian helicopters unleashed devastating firepower. Precision missiles striking without collapsing the caves. Electronic warfare jamming enemy communications. Night vision enabling 24-hour operations. Elite Burkinabè units wore advanced body armor, wielded modern rifles, coordinated with encrypted communications. Night vision goggles turned pitch-black tunnels into clear paths. Colonel James Mitchell, a former United States Special Forces officer, admitted grudgingly, "This operation demonstrates tactical and technological superiority that many Western armies would struggle to match in this terrain." Training had also changed. Russian instructors prepared special units for cave warfare, a skill set few militaries possess. Village defense forces were integrated, providing intelligence that only locals could gather. Coordination between branches was near flawless, every maneuver rehearsed, every bullet accounted for. And behind all of it was Traoré's doctrine. African solutions for African problems. No foreign troops on the ground, no outside command. Partnerships provided tools, but Africans made the decisions. Africans pulled the triggers, and Africans claimed the victory. The seized evidence from Cave Strike was as valuable as the victory itself. Financial documents revealed budgets of nearly $900,000 a month for terrorist operations. Traces of cryptocurrency transactions, hawala transfers, and money laundering through merchant networks came into focus. Advanced RPGs, heavy machine guns, and explosives with foreign markings proved state-level suppliers were involved. Recruitment videos targeted Europeans, North Americans, and disaffected African youth. Documents showed attempts to coordinate with opposition groups inside Burkina Faso, seeking to destabilize governments from within. This wasn't just terrorism, this was a system, and Cave Strike had pulled the curtain back. Colonel Traoré said it bluntly: "These are not isolated cells. These are pawns on an international board, and now we know who moves them." News of the victory exploded across Africa. Social media platforms lit up with hashtags, Cave Strike Victory, with more than 12 billion impressions, African military power with nearly 9 billion engagements, Traoré delivers victory with over 6 billion shares, terrorists defeated with almost 5 billion views. From Ouagadougou to Lagos, from Nairobi to Accra, young Africans flooded the streets, celebrating not just the victory of one nation, but the possibility of a new future. In Ouagadougou, 2.3 million people filled the streets, waving flags, singing, dancing. In Lagos, 1.8 million Nigerians rallied, demanding that their leaders invest in similar capabilities. In Nairobi, 1.4 million marched in solidarity. In Accra, over 1 million filled Independence Square, chanting Traoré's name. This was not just patriotism, it was continental pride. Africans saw proof with their own eyes that African armies could protect African people. African leaders did not stay silent. Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali declared, "Cave Strike proves that when African armies are equipped and trained properly, no enemy can withstand us." General Abdourahmane Tiani of Niger added, "This victory belongs not just to Burkina Faso, but to the entire Sahel. We fight one fight for one freedom." Even beyond the Sahel, recognition poured in. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa affirmed, "Burkina Faso has shown that African solutions to African problems are not slogans. They are reality. They deliver results." But perhaps the greatest impact was on Africa's youth. For years, young Africans had been told to rely on outsiders, to wait for aid, to depend on foreign militaries. Cave Strike shattered that dependence. On TikTok, Instagram, X, and Facebook, young people celebrated Traoré as the general who delivers victories. Memes spread of gold-armored soldiers labeled African Avengers. Music videos sampled his speeches. Across the continent, a generation found a new symbol of what was possible. Brothers and sisters, Operation Cave Strike was more than just a military victory. It was proof. Proof that everything Captain Ibrahim Traoré promised about sovereignty, about security, about African capability was real. For 3 years, critics sneered at his military buildup. They questioned the money spent on drones, on training, on armored units. They said it was a gamble. Cave Strike answered them with devastating clarity. 107 terrorists eliminated, 0 Burkinabè casualties, $500,000 seized, advanced weapons confiscated, international networks exposed, villages liberated, civilians safe. This is not propaganda. This is documented fact. And beyond the numbers, Cave Strike proves something even bigger, that African problems can be solved by Africans when they have the tools, the training, and the will. No Western troops were involved. No foreign intelligence dictated the mission. This was African planning, African execution, African victory. The evidence now shows what Traoré has warned for years. Terrorism in the Sahel is not organic. It is fed by international money and international politics. Cave Strike exposed that system for all to see, and young Africans across the continent are celebrating because they finally believe what once felt like a dream, that African soldiers can defend African people. Cave Strike is not the end of the story. It is the beginning, A demonstration that modern African militaries, led with vision and armed with determination, can achieve results that rival or surpass any in the world. It is the proof of the African Renaissance in military form. Not only art, not only culture, not only politics, but security, sovereignty, strength. So remember this. August 13th, 2025. The day 107 terrorists were eliminated. The day 0 soldiers fell. The day villages were freed. The day international networks were exposed. The day Africa proved that it did not need saviors from outside, because it had its own. Captain Ibrahim Traoré said it clearly: African solutions for African problems. On that day, those words were no longer a promise. They were reality. And as we close this chapter, we say together, Cave Strike was not just a military operation, it was a statement, a declaration, a flag planted in the soil of history. African victory, African sovereignty, African future.